Louis H. Sullivan is considered one of the most influential American architects of the 19th and 20th century. He is regarded as the father of modern American architecture.
That Louis Sullivan was one of the 3 or 4 great American architects of the early 20th and influencing the entire 20th century.
Sullivan was a kind of a man ahead of his time. When he was practicing, the affection for architecture was largely vested in revival movements, in the kind of examination of our past and recreating it in revival styles.
He was born in Boston, Massachusetts. He was educated at the École des Beaux-Arts in Paris. He traveled extensively throughout that country, eventually settled down in Chicago.
In Chicago, Sullivan began working for Dankmar Adler in 1879. By 1880, he was made partner. The firm of Adler and Sullivan produced many buildings throughout the United States, their most famous being the Guaranty Building in Buffalo, New York.
The Guaranty Building is one of the most important, if not the most important buildings built in the 1890 to 1910 era, because it's the first building to represent a steel frame. It really represents the first skyscraper that was built in the United States.
When you talk about what a building represents, you get right to the core of Sullivan's critique of architecture, his sense that we were unhinged from our art and out of step with social and economic reality. So he looked at land values, he looked at a prosperous city in Buffalo at the turn of the century or approaching the turn of the century, and he said, wow, land is more valuable, density and vibrancy is an important expression, but he never once gave up his art. So you find in the details of the tile and the clarity of the base, middle, and top of this building an elegant architectural expression, which also captures the spirit of the economy and the prosperity that was Buffalo at the time.
The Guaranty Building is the seminal building in Buffalo's progress from a relatively small town to a very large town, a very large city, which occurred as a result of the building of the Erie Canal and represented really the emergence of Buffalo as a major commercial center.
He referenced that he wanted to make this building look like it grew out of nature, and for that reason, the top of the building he felt should be representative like a grove of trees, which is one of the ways of explaining the very ebullient cornice that you see on the exterior of the building.
The Guaranty Building was originally commissioned by oil producer Haskell L. Taylor. Taylor died before the building began construction. Construction began in 1895 and was completed by 1896.
It meant character. It meant who we were as a city, who the owners were. The original owner, Taylor, wanted the best building in the city. He died before it was finished. The construction company was so proud of the building, they put their name on it, the Guaranty Building. And then one of the more prosperous economic kind of corporations in the city at the time, the Prudential Insurance Company, put their name on the building. They identified with the building.
Upon its completion and into the 20th century, the Guaranty Building was regarded as the finest business address in the city of Buffalo.
The interesting thing about the Guaranty Building is that in its 100-year history, 105-year history or 8-year history, it actually was in financial difficulty more often than it was in solid financial condition, beginning with the fact that the Guaranty Company basically defaulted on the building as it was being built.
The Guaranty Building, from probably the 20s and the Depression forward, did suffer through a series of declines. Part of that was parallel with the growth of the city and in that many other buildings superseded this building in terms of their capacity. The Guaranty Building was designed at a time when a typical office was 1, 2, 3, or 4 people. As organizations began to grow and the Guaranty Building became less desirable because of its small floor plate.
The deteriorating Prudential Building underwent extensive renovation in 1955 in an effort to modernize the building. A fiberglass exterior was added to the lower floors, and the office spaces were updated to current office standards. In 1974, a fire broke out, severely damaging the interior. The building continued to slip into a decline. Later that year, the Prudential Building was sold at auction. It was not until the late 1970s that conservation efforts were made to save the building. The new owners considered demolishing the building. However, local preservationists convinced the owners to save it. In 1975, the building became a National Historic Landmark. However, the building continued its steady decline. In 1983, a $12.4 million restoration project is completed, and the building is renamed the Guaranty Building.
One of the most significant things that happened in the building in that redevelopment was that the building was designed originally as a U-shape, and light would stream in from the rear of the building. That core of the building, as it's called, including the elevators and the exit stairs and the lavatories and so forth, took up a certain amount of space in the building. And it could support a building probably of almost twice the floor plate of the Guaranty Building. And so one of the objectives of the first developers is they wanted to try to expand the floor plate so that they'd have more area in the building that they could use for rental purposes. It increased the overall floor plate of the building by some 30%.
The Guaranty Building's future was looking bright until 1998, when its future was threatened again due to its owner going bankrupt.
The main tenant of the building left in the mid-90s. It was an insurance company, and so the finances of the building began to teeter, and the building went into bankruptcy. And at that point, our firm started having serious negotiations about potentially purchasing the building.
In 2002, a Buffalo-based law firm, Hodgson Russ, purchases the building for use as its principal home office.
Hodgson Russ started to occupy parts of the building, and then before it befell another fate, which would have been to have it destroyed, decided on its own to take over the building's ownership and restore it to its original glory.
When the building came up and had fallen on hard times, that it was natural for us to buy the building.
In 2003, Hodgson Russ began a $15.6 million restoration.
The costs that are associated with the historic rehabilitation far outweigh the tax benefits that you get, so it wasn't really a money-making venture for us. It was really the right thing to do at the right time. It was as much a civic gesture as it was a business decision for our firm. But when it came time to pick an architect for the renovation, we reached out to a number of firms nationally. We received interest from some of the largest architecture firms in the country. We ultimately settled on a firm out of Washington, D.C., Gensler Architecture, in large part because of their affinity for the building, but also that they were specialists in law firm design, so it was a marriage of both disciplines. And the historical aspects of the building and the local aspects of the building required the specialized knowledge of Peter Flynn.
It was very fortuitous that Hodgson Russ came along and wanted to make it as their headquarters, because they are now occupying all 13 floors of the building.
It's a building that's as relevant today to its new owners, and they're as eager to identify with it and be identified in it as the originals were. That's a kind of way of understanding architecture, to use Sullivan's words, as a democratic activity, one that both invited your engagement and expressed who you were in the engagement. And in that interaction, neither one gets captured. Each makes the other better.